All right, hi there, and welcome to MS201, Lesson 09 on Leadership Analysis and the ALRM, or the Army Leadership Requirements Model. My name is Captain Silver Beatty, and I'm an APMS with the University of Montana Grizzly Battalion, and I'm going to be leading you through this lesson today. Now, before we even begin, if you've watched my videos, you already know this, but there's that QR code right there on the slide. Feel free to scan that if you can, get it on another device. That's going to pull up a live view link or a website version of this exact same lesson. And what benefits you on that is that one, it's going to have some embedded links that you can click on to pull up some additional information. It's also going to likely be the most updated version of this lesson. So depending on when you're watching this, it's being recorded in October 2024. If you're viewing it in a different school year, there may have been some slight changes, and that QR code is going to bring up the most updated information for you. Now, like I said, with scanning that QR code, this slide right here is always going to have some read-aheads and resources for you. If you have that pulled up, you'll be able to click on that read-ahead right there. It's actually just a PDF that's going to have some more in-depth information about this lesson that we're going to go over together. All right, so let's just dive right in. Now, as you go through, if you see something labeled "think about it" or "what do you think," I do want you to take a moment to actually pause the video and reflect on the questions within that slide. It'll help you just get a little bit more engaged with the material and be able to connect it to your own life in general. So with that, after everything that you've learned regarding leadership and some of the other lessons that I've posted that you may have watched, what do you think it actually means to be a leader? And then how do we as people determine if someone is a leader? Is it just by role, responsibility, what they've been assigned to? Or are there people out there that are leaders that aren't necessarily labeled or titled as a leader? Now, another thing that I want you to do here is actually pause, and I want you to consider when we look around at all the leaders around us, right? Your professors, your cadre, maybe your employers if you have a job. We might actually find ourselves wondering exactly why they excel in their positions. So I want you to take some time to choose a specific person that you consider to be a good leadership mentor. I want you to take a couple moments and actually list the reasons why you view them as a good mentor. All right, now hopefully you actually made that list. I want you to go back to that there and what did you actually list? Why did you choose that specific leader for your response? Were there some other leaders that popped into your head and the one that you wrote down just happened to be the best of them? Or was it the first one you thought of? Are some of the other ones that you may have thought about, would they have some different traits or different reasons for being a good mentor? Then did you think of some people that would not be a good leadership mentor, but maybe they're in a position of leadership? All right, so what are we going to learn about today? By the time you're done with this video, I want you to be able to analyze the components of the Army Leadership Requirements Model. Now, I've done some videos on this before. You may have seen it. It's going to look a little different today than how I've taught it in the past. And then I want you to be able to actually assess the leadership attributes and the competencies of different individual leaders and of yourself. So that's the goal by the end of this lesson today. So what do you think? Why should we even analyze the leadership attributes of others? Why do we look at people and think about what their attributes are? Well, we want to be able to learn how to become more competent leaders ourselves. And we can do that by reading doctrine, but also by watching the actions of the leaders around us, right? They're our role models. They're the examples of leadership. Sometimes good, sometimes not so great. But we always want to be able to analyze what makes them a leader in general. So then how do we actually assess the competencies that leaders demonstrate? Remember, there's a difference between attributes and competencies. Well, we just compare what we see as far as their behavior and actions to the actual ALRM, right? The Army Leadership Requirements Model, and what they list as competencies. So that's how we analyze and assess leadership in general. So what's the purpose of leadership? Why do we have it? Why is it needed? Well, we know that the definition is influencing people, right? And we want to be able to provide purpose, direction, and motivation. And ultimately, the purpose of all that is to accomplish a mission and improve our organization. So in the context of leadership, how do our attributes apply? Remember, our attributes are who we are. Well, the attributes are characteristic or even just the quality of our people, a group, whatever you want to look at it wise, that helps define a leader, leaders, or the full organization. Now, what type of competencies do we expect from our leaders? Well, any observable leadership behaviors that encompass the knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics that distinguish levels of leader performance in the duty environment is going to encompass a competency. Remember, attributes are who we are. Competencies are what we do or the behaviors that we are showing, that we're demonstrating. And those behaviors should cover knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics. Whoa, it's a lot of information right here, but this is your Army Leadership Requirements Model, right? Now, if you are a MS2 or a sophomore or a basic course level cadet or student, you should already be somewhat familiar with that model on the left. So that is your ALRM. That's a more modernized version of what you might have seen in doctrine or on other slides, but this encompasses that idea of the be, know, do, the attributes and competencies, and where they all fall in, right? So as a quick refresher, we know that character and presence are part of the be portion of the model. Be these things, be a good quality person, and be around, be fit, be resilient. We also know that intellect falls under the know portion of the model, and all three of those are considered attributes or who you are as a person. Down here, leads, develops, and achieves, those are all competencies that fall under the do portion of our ALRM. So this is a basic, very basic version of that model. Now I want you to be able to start thinking at a deeper level. So over here, this is a more defined version of each of those attributes and competencies. So it's not just be a good person. Character isn't just being a good person. It means that you live the Army values, you're an empathetic leader, you follow the warrior ethos, you are disciplined, and you're humble. You show and demonstrate humility. Your presence isn't just being there, being in person. It's having that military and professional bearing, having physical fitness and mental fitness, having that confidence and showing that confidence, and then being resilient or being able to fight through adversity. Intellect isn't just being smart. That's actually being able to demonstrate mental agility, making sound judgment calls, being innovative in finding solutions to problems, demonstrating interpersonal tact and how to work with different types of people, and then your expertise and knowledge in technical and tactical skills. And moving down to those competencies, leading actually is enveloped into a larger idea, right, of being able to lead others. You can be a leader, but if people don't follow you, you're not much of a leader, right? You are going to be able to build trust amongst your subordinates, your peers, and your superiors. You have to be able to extend influence beyond the chain of command. Who can you influence outside of just the people you're directly responsible for? Do you lead by example? And are you able to communicate effectively? In the develops portion, this isn't just developing other people. In fact, I think the most important part of this is being able to prepare yourself. That's doing the read-aheads, that's doing the review, that's studying what you need to, that's being in shape so that you're prepared for more physical environments. It also means that you're able to create a positive environment. So when you walk into a room, are people excited to have you there? Do you bring positivity? Or are you kind of the Debbie Downer? Now, of course, developing others is a great competency to have, but how do you do it? Are you able to take the knowledge that you have within you and impart it onto others? Do you push others to become better versions of themselves? Then it also requires being a good steward of the profession itself. Now, competencies also envelop that achieve section, right? And that doesn't mean accomplishing a mission and yay, you achieved an A. Yes, it does mean getting results, but it also incorporates being able to anticipate things, integrating tasks, roles, resources, and priorities into a mission. It means being able to improve the performance of yourself and those around you and your unit. It also means being able to give feedback and give effective and constructive feedback. Of course, executing and then adapting to the environment. So again, it's good to know the 6 different categories involved in the ALRM, but now I want you to start to understand what all of those actually mean and what the competencies and attributes really envelop. All right, so now I encourage you to just take a picture, take a screenshot. This is just a bigger blown up version of that model on the right from the last slide, and really start to study these. I say take a picture, throw it on your phone. That way you have a reference to go back to on a regular basis. And you can start to slowly look through all of those and assess yourself or assess the advanced course cadets in your program. This is exactly how the MS3s in your program are evaluated on their evaluation cards, what we call SOAR cards, used to be blue cards. All of these things are used to evaluate them in both garrison and in a field environment. So it's really good for you at this level to start to understand these and learn how to capitalize on the strengths that you already have listed here and start to develop yourself in where maybe you're falling just a little bit short or you don't understand how to do those things yet. All right, so let's think about this. Do you think the ALRM applies to both formal and informal leadership? Why or why not? Is it one or the other, or is it both? Well, it's both. Leaders at all levels and in all positions, whether they're actually titled or not, everybody has to demonstrate the attributes and competencies. Because even if you're in an informal leadership position, not technically designated or technically titled, you're still expected as a soldier in general to demonstrate all of these things. And likely because the way that the Army is built is to continue moving up and progressing into leadership positions, it's important that you're able to demonstrate these things early in your career and expect those that answer to you or that you're in charge of to also demonstrate these things. Now, let's go through all of the attributes and competencies together. Why do we think that character is an attribute? This seems pretty self-explanatory. Well, your leadership is actually affected by your character and your identity. Integrity, right? Doing the right thing always, legally and morally, even when nobody's looking, is a key mark of a leader's character in general. The considerations required in leader choices are seldom obvious as either wholly ethical or even unethical. So these facets all tie into the development and ideology of what defines character as an attribute for a leader. Remember the warrior ethos, your Army values, being disciplined, being humble, all of those are part of being a leader of good character. Now, what about presence? How is this expected in a leader? Well, it's definitely the impression that a leader makes on others, and it contributes to the success in getting people to follow you. So if you're a present leader, you are more likely to get people to follow you. If you're not around, you're not fit, you don't carry yourself with professional and military bearing, it can cause people to turn the other way. So this impression of presence in general is really just the whole sum of your outward appearance, your demeanor, the actions that you take, and the words that you use, as well as your inward character and intellect. Presence entails the actual projection of that military and professional bearing, your holistic fitness, so not just physical, also mental, your own confidence, and your own ability to get through hard things. So why do you think we need intellect? Again, this seems pretty self-explanatory, right? Our intellect affects how well we think about problems, how well we create solutions, how good our decisions are that we make, and how we lead others. So it actually affects multiple parts of the ALRM. Now, people can differ in their intellectual strengths and their ways of thinking, right? Each leader needs to be self-aware of their strengths as well as their limitations, though, and be able to apply them accordingly as needed. Being mentally agile actually helps you address changes and adapt to the situation and the dynamics of operations. So you have to be able to carry all of those portions of intellect to be able to work through things that change, because we all know that plans change, there's wrenches thrown in that plan, and we have to be able to be adaptable to those different situations. Now let's talk about leads. Let's get into the competencies a little bit. How does a leader actually demonstrate that? Well, they have to demonstrate leadership daily, right? So actually leading and leadership is part of being a leader. Crazy. This competency actually encompasses 5 different aspects. So you have to be able to lead others, extend influence beyond your command, build trust from everyone around you, lead by example, and communicate. So as long as you're doing those 5 things, you're able to demonstrate that competency pretty darn well. Now, how can actually using that competency of develops help you with unit performance? We talked about this a little bit in developing people around you, and that also includes creating that positive environment, because when people want to come around, when they want to be where they are, they're more likely to prepare themselves. And then when they're more prepared, they're likely more able to develop others, and then everyone becomes a better steward of our profession. So developing and working towards a positive work environment can actually assist with all the follow-on portions of that competency. Now, what conditions do you have to set as a leader in order to say that you achieved? Well, you have to be able to accomplish the tasks and mission on time and to standard. So getting the results is the goal of leadership, but you have to remain mindful that leading people and creating positive conditions can actually assist you to operate more successfully. So getting results actually requires the right level of delegation, empowerment, and trust. And when we can figure out that good balance, we can actually create a more successful and positive environment to better achieve those missions on time and to standard. All right, so how do you think all of this information can assist you as you prepare for future training events like FTXs or even CST in just a couple years? Well, you can just use this lesson as a guide. Like I said, start studying those different portions of the attributes and competencies and develop yourself, right? Prepare yourself for what you're going to be evaluated on as you move into those leadership positions at those different events. Now, how do you think you can use this information later in your career? Well, it doesn't really change. It's still going to guide you, because someday, and not too far away, you're going to be a platoon leader. Or maybe you won't stay in ROTC and you're going to be some sort of entry-level leader in another position in the civilian sector. Either way, you can apply everything from this lesson and from the ALRM to guide you in becoming successful. And with those lessons learned, you can become successful in whatever field you end up choosing. So, this is where I want you to actually do this practical exercise. If you scan that link, that little QR code there, it's going to pull up some instructions for this. What I want you to do is just choose a leader to analyze. Any type of leader that you can do a little bit of research on, and you're going to answer some questions just using short answers. Then you're going to complete what we call a leadership concept map. And I'm going to show you an example of that on the next sheet of paper. And this is all part of assessing leaders against the ALRM. So what do they show or demonstrate from the attributes and competencies? So scan that real quick, pause if you need to get it scanned and pulled up so that you can see the examples and see the instructions. And then in just a moment, I'm going to switch forward and show you the example here. All right, so here's your example. We're going to use Abraham Lincoln for our example. Now this is what we call the sketch map, right? So you have your leader right here, Abraham Lincoln, and I want you to copy or basically sketch another version of this. However it works best for you. This is just one way that you can do it. But Abraham Lincoln here, we're going to focus on his attribute of intellect. We know that he was a pretty smart, mentally agile person. Now in his developmental area, we're going to talk about his job or position. So we are going to evaluate him as the United States president. Then down here, you're going to see 3 other bubbles. These are all your competencies, right? So you're going to have leads right here, develops here, and achieves. And then how did he, Abraham Lincoln, demonstrate leads? Well, he ran for president and he was a good public speaker. So that's that communicates portion, right? Develops. How did he develop people or himself? Well, he prepared himself, and then he developed the Emancipation Proclamation. And then achieves. What did he do that demonstrated achieves? Well, he appointed some generals and he appointed a cabinet. So this is an example of assessing another leader. Here is what I want you to copy down. And then I also want you to think about what could that leader that you chose actually improve on? Because this is supposed to be things that they did really well. How did these competencies add into this attribute right here? And what job or position did they hold? So take a moment to pause, pick your leader, pick one of the 3 attributes to focus on, then list the 3 competencies and how they assisted with that attribute. Make sure you list their job and position and 2 examples of each of the competencies down here. And don't forget to think about what could they have improved on. All right, so I hope that you paused and are coming back and that you have a whole sketch map pulled out because we're going to use that again in just a moment. But how do you think comparing the ALRM against other leaders actually helps us understand them better as leaders? Well, we know that evaluating leader attributes help us understand how the attributes in general can shape their behavior and learning. Character, presence, and intellect capture the values that define their identity. Now, this is visible to your superiors and subordinates alike and reveals kind of a model leader to emulate. And evaluating their competencies actually helps us understand how to apply the 3 categories. They demonstrate the qualifications of the leader, as well as provide a clear and consistent way of conveying the expectations that we have for Army leaders. So when you're looking at a leader, why do you think it's also important to consider their faults or their developmental areas? Remember, I said think about things that they could improve on. Well, because doing that, you're able to dissect leadership mistakes after the fact, and then you can look for interventions that could have prevented that outcome. Taking that a step further, we also know then if we can find the fix afterward, let's say, take example, the after action review or the AAR that we do, we take those lessons learned, we apply them to future problems that may look the same, so we already have a fix in place, or we can prevent a mistake happening altogether. All right, so like I said, we're not quite done yet. This is going to be part 2 of this exercise. So while you're preparing for the next lesson called Assessing Your Own Leadership, I want you to complete that same type of concept map on yourself. So for this part, feel free to choose to evaluate yourself either as a cadet or a university student. But I really want you to be honest with yourself and give solid examples of the 1 attribute and 3 competencies that you display. And I want you to use that enhanced list associated with each. So develops others, gets results, etc. So go ahead and use another sheet of paper and sketch out your personal leadership concept map. And don't forget to think about what you could improve on. It should look like this. All right, so what do you think? Was that part of the exercise easy or was it difficult? And why? Are you one of those people that it's pretty easy to dwell on what you're not so great at? Or are you pretty good at picking out what you're good at and then you struggle with figuring out the self-awareness of what you need to work on? Now, there's no right or wrong answer there. This whole exercise is just to practice and to get used to assessing yourself as a leader. Because the only way we really get better is to be more self-aware, understand our strengths and how to capitalize on them, but also focus on our maybe developmental areas. I don't like to use the word weaknesses. I like to think of them as just things that we can develop. So what can you develop on and what do you know that you're good at? And are you actually demonstrating that? Are you showing confidence? Are you working on getting better at those things? And then thinking through all of what I just said, how can you take this self-reflection forward to be a better cadet or be a better student? All right, so let's close this up here. I really hope you did get some stuff out of this. I hope you did take the time to assess a specific leader of your choosing, but I even more so hope that you took some time to assess yourself. But it doesn't stop here, right? For the rest of your ROTC career or whatever career you're actually in, and for the rest of your life in society, you should consistently and constantly be doing some self-awareness and reflection, figure out what we need to work on, because we can always get better, right? So I hope that now that we're closing out, you feel more confident in being able to analyze the components of the ALRM and that you understand it a little bit better. And I hope that you are able to go forward and assess the attributes and competencies of other leaders in your life and of yourself. Now, if any of this was difficult or didn't quite make sense, feel free to reach out to your primary instructor or cadre member, maybe even an MS3 or MS4, and get some of your questions answered. Talk to some of your peers, have some reflections. At our program, we do some peer evals where we really focus on giving good constructive feedback on developmental things and our strengths. So I encourage you to do that. Work with each other and get to know yourself better, especially in terms of the ALRM. Now, if you still can't get any questions answered or you have something else that you want to talk about, feel free to try to reach out to me depending on when you're watching this. You can always reach me or try to reach me at silver.beaty, B-E-A-T-Y, at mso.umt.edu. Thanks for sticking with me through this lesson, and I'll see you on the next one.